Staples from Hanover, New Hampshire, and I've got two questions for you. First, I'd like to hear your thoughts on selling securities short and what your experience has been recently and over the course of your career. The second question I'd like to ask is how you go about building a position in a security you've identified. Using USG as a recent example, I believe you bought most of your shares at between $14 and $15 a share. But certainly you must have thought it was a reasonable investment at 18 or 19. Why was 14 and 15 the magic number? And now that it's dropped to around 12, do you continue to build your position? How do you decide what your ultimate position is going to be?
Well, we can't talk about any specific security. So our buying techniques depend very much on the kind of security we're dealing in. Sometimes it's a security that might take many, many months to acquire, and other times you can do it very quickly, and sometimes it may pay to pay up, and other times it doesn't. And the truth is you never know exactly what the right technique is to use as you're doing it, but you just use your best judgment based on past purchases. But we can't discuss any specific one. Short selling, it's an interesting item to study because it's ruined a lot of people. It is the sort of thing that you can go broke doing. Being short something where your loss is unlimited is quite different than being long something that you've already paid for. And it's tempting. You see way more stocks that are dramatically overvalued in your career than you will see stocks that are dramatically undervalued. I mean, it's the nature of securities markets to occasionally promote various things to the sky so that securities will frequently sell for 5 or 10 times what they're worth, and they will very, very seldom sell for 20% or 10% of what they're worth. So therefore, you see these much greater discrepancies between price and value and on the overvaluation side. So you might think it's easier to make money on short selling. And all I can say is it hasn't been for me. I don't think it's been for Charlie. It is a very, very tough business because of the fact that you face unlimited losses. I mean, I would say that of the things that we have felt like shorting over the years, the batting average is very high in terms of eventual. They would work out very well eventually if you held them through. But it is very painful, and it's in my experience, it's a whole lot easier to make money on the long side. You can't make, in my view, you can't make really big money doing it because you can't expose yourself to the loss that would be there if you did do it on a big scale. And Charlie, how about you?
Being short something, which keeps going up because somebody is promoting it in a half-crooked way and you keep losing and they call on you for more margin. It just isn't worth it to have that much irritation in your life. It isn't that hard to make money somewhere else with less irritation.
It would never work on a Berkshire scale anyway. I mean, you could never do it for the kind of money that would be necessary to do it with in order to have a real effect on Berkshire's overall value. So it's not something we think about. It's interesting, though. I mean, I've got a copy of the New York Times from the day of the Northern Pacific corner, and that was a case where each owned over 50% of the Northern Pacific Company, Northern Pacific Railroad. And when two people each own over 50% of something, it's going to be interesting. And Northern Pacific on that day went from 170 to 1,000, and it was selling for cash because you had to actually have the certificates that day rather than the normal settlement date. And on the front page of the New York Times, which incidentally sold for a penny in those days, it's had a little more inflation than Coca-Cola. Front page of the New York Times, right next to the story about it, it told about a brewer in Newark, New Jersey, who had gotten a margin call that day because of this, and he jumped into a vat of hot beer and died. And that's really never appealed to me as the ending of a financial